In that now. So, Shanti, welcome. Great to have those of you here live with me. Always good to see you. And those of you tuning in later on, great that you're connecting with us too. We think about you as well. And if you're tuning in for the first time, my name is Shailen, and my mother and I, we are students of the Brahma Kumari Center in London in the UK. And these chit chats are really geared towards the regular students of the Brahma Kumaris who hear the main Murali every day. And it's a space, it's an informal space where we can ask questions, churn, share experiences, gain clarification. So everyone is welcome. So can I hand over to anyone? Maybe you want to talk about what we've just been talking about, or anything else anyone wants to share?
Om Shanti Shalin.
Shanti.
Actually, we were reading a Murali yesterday on this, and Baba was explaining how we become worship worthy, what levels, and it's beautiful Murali. I think 14th of Shaila's online. She can help 14th of June 1977. 900,000 subjects, Baba said, yes. But Baba said, I think yesterday or day before, even the servants and maids can become the king and queen. Probably that's later on. But I had the question yesterday because Baba talking about worship worthy depends on the effort. So Baba said, it depends on how detached you are from your senses. Your senses had to become lotus. That's why when devotees now, when they go to the statues, they touch each of the senses as lotus and pray. So your worship-worthy status will depend on how much you're going to be detached from your senses. If you are victorious from the senses fully, then you will be a statue of deity. But if you're not, then you will be worshipped as saligram. Such a beautiful Murali, such a detail. And the level of worship as well. So I had the question, Shalan Bhai, about Rama and Sita. I mean, they come in Silver Age, but they are worshipped really high as well. Do you have any churning on that? I mean, they come later. I mean, I know Lakshmi and Narayan worship really, really. I mean, the temples are really wealthy, luxurious, and they worship really at such a high level, Krishna as well. But the same level, Rama and Sita as well. So my question was, they came in Silver Age, but they were worshipped really at a level. So if you have anything inside, that would help. Thank you, Om Shanti.
I think that's really helpful. And Shayla Ben, thanks for that reference. So 16th June 77. Also, good morning to you, Nearby. Great to have you here for the first time. I really enjoyed my time in New York, Great Neck, back in April. And I think we're planning to visit you all again in a few months. So yes, it is an interesting topic. So let me just summarize something I just said before we started the recording. It can be a little bit confusing, but Baba talks about how this drama is, let me use the word operated, like operationalized on the basis of rosaries. And rosaries, this came up this week, didn't it, in the Muralis? And you see, rosaries are worshipped, aren't they? They're remembered, they're a technique for remembrance. And they themselves are considered to have this holy power as well. Now, what is a rosary if we were using modern language? Well, we would use the word team, wouldn't we? We would say teamwork, we would say collaboration, and so on. So one of the things we have to learn about the drama is that the way in which we're often taught history leads us to develop a hero mentality. So such and such a, usually it's a great man. So such and such a great man achieved this. Such and such a great man achieved that. But actually, they were part of a team. They were always a group that achieved things. And the whole of history, no individual has achieved anything on their own. If we think of the great people of the 20th century, we think of Gandhi, we think of Martin Luther King, we think of Mandela. They didn't do anything on their own. It was always a group, but they have to have that charisma, that clarity of thinking, their values, that example. That's what makes them a leader. But this is what Baba would call a rosary. You see, so when Baba's talking about the rosary of 108, he's talking about the rosary of victory, you know. And so, like you're describing, what is that victory? It's the victory over the sense organs, the victory over the mind. So for sure, my understanding is for that first division, Baba in later Morales prefers to use the phrase division 1 or first division rather than 108, because he says that it makes Brahmins lose hope because they think that there's 108 daddies, they got no chance. And so Baba reassures us that it's not, he's not limited by other people's numbers. He will take his own decisions as to who should be in which division. And so that first division, he publishes a criteria. Maybe still in your countries, it might be like this. It used to be like this in schools here in the UK, where they have like a norm, we call it normative system, where only 10% can get an A grade, and then the next 10% get a B grade, and so on. But now we don't use that system in the UK for some years. We use a criteria-based system. So for example, in my class, if however many students get a distinction, we just give them that. There's no limit to how many can get it. So this is my take on Baba's approach. He uses a criteria-based assessment system. And the Morales, like you're describing, they tell us the criteria. He's very open, like it's very, very detailed and very, very clear what he regards to be the classification, the qualification for worthiness, to be able to be part of that Sun dynasty. And then we have the second division. And when you see, especially when it's translated, I think, into English, the word dasi, it comes as maids and servants, and we think of people with a mop and a broom. But for a king, a prime minister is a das and dasi. So my take on when he says dasi is lords, prime ministers. I'm not thinking about someone with a broom here. And so when Baba says that you've got the kings, the queens, the das and dasi, you've got the kings are the decision makers. They're the strategy makers. But then you need people to enact. And I don't think the kings of the Sun dynasty are the people that enact. And we see this in the yagya as well. So there are many souls who have this ability to enact, but they don't necessarily have the level of yoga and purity for that Sun dynasty level, that top level. So we had that morally yesterday, didn't we, about what are your final thoughts going to be? What is your pilgrimage? Are you going to claim Shri Baba's heart throne? We had that insight from Mama the other week that in every breath am I remembering Shiv Baba, because any breath can be our final breath, of course. We heard about Daddy Chandramani, and that Murli will come up just in a few Sundays. I think we're hearing the February one this Sunday, so possibly the next week will be the Murli after Daddy Chandramani left suddenly. Those of you who are older BKs, you'll remember her. And Baba said very clearly that she passed it on. She was ever ready. And so she didn't have any other thought other than Shiv Baba's remembrance when that suddenly the final breath came. So he's talking about this stage of constant yoga, I think, as being the main qualification for the Sun dynasty. And it has to be a volume of yoga over a long period of time. So we had, like, this morning, we've had some more beautiful practices, haven't we? Maybe some of you have not had a chance to hear the Morley yet. I know it's early where you are. But the Baba's giving us a practice today of being the lighthouse, that while we're being karma yogis, one eye nirvana, the other eye the golden age. So like people like Surya Bai, they're very helpful, aren't they? Because their classes are all about methods. How do we put these things into practice? How do we have yoga? What should we think? How do we have practice? And this morning in the Morally Baba again, Brahma Baba is teaching us about this Ru Ruhan, this spirit to spirit conversation. How do we maintain? We're gaining insights. How did Brahma Baba do it? He was talking to, he had an inner dialogue with Shiv Baba going through the day, which raised his intoxication or kept it at that very high level. And I had the opportunity to see Devi Janki every day in London, and I can certainly testify that just the high level of intoxication, like constant excitement, constant enthusiasm for just being with Baba and just being yourself and serving, excited to see the family, excited to serve. It's just a level of intoxication that's like oozing out of her being. And this is, we get an insight into what Brahma Baba would have been like as well through that. So I think through all of that, through their examples, we understand what that means to be in the first division. Now this is the stage that we have to reach. And these are the souls who become karmati, and then they leave their body. So this is our aim. This is our destination. I was asked a few weeks ago that do I have because we're pretty sure it's not just 108. So someone asked, do I have a number in my mind? I mean, I don't know. But looking across the Brahmin family, my guess would be that first division would be somewhere around maybe 50,000 Brahmins. My observation is we have a lot of Brahmins who are on that path to becoming worthy. And even if we're not there yet, I feel great confidence in my fellow BKs. Those that are studying the morally with a lot of attention, and there are quite a lot. I mean, it's only because of COVID we all suddenly became online and we've all connected like this, haven't we? That you get an idea, don't you, that actually there are all these Brahmins everywhere and they're sincerely making their efforts. So I feel very confident that a lot of Brahmins will make it into that first division. Then the second, Neobai, thanks for your question there. I think that the daddies and Baba Mama, they're examples that it is possible, that constantly high intoxication. And my understanding is that it's like a buffer, it's like some sort of protective layer, almost, this intoxication to the challenges of the world. Or those of you living in the centers, you know, it's so many sanskars, so many karmic accounts. You live at home, so many sanskars, so many karmic accounts. But I thought today's Morley was just like, if even public people want to understand what is a BK, I think today's Morley sums it up. Like Daddy Yankee used to say, simple living, high thinking. It's a great slogan for life. Anyone can gain success just through this slogan. And because it's our expectations that give us a lot of sorrow as well, don't they? We just continuously increasing expectations. That's the Iron Age consciousness, isn't it? Nothing is ever good enough. You always want more. You get that some of that, you want even more. Expectations continually growing, putting pressure on everyone. And this is why we're having struggles in government and public administration as well. So that's not the right way. But what Baba's teaching us is simple. Let's think about simplicity. And probably not for a couple of years, but there's a book, a Lokic book that I'm going to work on, which is on this concept of enoughness. And there are some professors in London who, they're economists, and they have written on this theme that could we have an economy based on enoughness? Because our current economies are based on more, aren't they? We must always want more, we must always grow, we must always have more and more, more and more and more. And we're destroying our planet, aren't we, through that system? So when is enough? And this is what Baba's teaching us, that actually you meet these daddies, as I was describing this morning, very, very simple. Like the scene that's coming into my mind, I think because Renjinben is sitting next to me, is when I was 10 years old. Those of you that are older Brahmins, you'll remember that when you went to Madhuban, we always had to just go through Delhi. And we stayed at Panda Bhavan near Rohtak Road and caught that 20-hour train into Abu Road. And it was my first time in India, and I really didn't like it. It was far too hot and dusty and too many insects. And Daddy Gulzar and Daddy Gulzar's mother, they lived in that Bhavan, that near Rohtak Road Bhavan. And we were just departing, and I can recall Renjinben calling me to quickly come and meet Daddy. Baba had named her Daddy All-Rounder, and that was Daddy Gulzar's Lokic mother. Do you want to tell the story why she was named All-Rounder?
They were in Madhuban with Sakar Baba, and Sakar Baba needed someone to run the errands and to do all-round service. And so he asked for volunteers who would volunteer, and nobody wanted to do all-round service. Some offered some service they can do, but all-round, I forgot her Lokic name. I think, yeah. So she and so she did with her true heart and just perfectly and honestly. So this is why Baba gave her that name, Dadi Oldra.
So she had a bedroom on the ground floor of that. It was 25 New Rohtak Road, isn't it? Panda Bhavan, in Delhi. And I can remember we went into the room, and it was so simple. Like these daddies just lived so simply. And she was lying on her bed. She was just so happy to meet us. And she had 4 apples. She suddenly reached inside of her sheets and pulled out these apples.
Great.
So she had apples and grapes underneath her sheets, and she just had things to give to people ready. And this is what these daddies were like. They didn't have anything, but they had enough to give. And that was their joy. And Daddy Janki was like that. So you didn't feel they don't have. You see, this is the intoxication. That they feel full. And people who have many things, they feel empty. So this is what Baba's teaching us, that for yogis, the fullness is within. And this must show that you are full souls. You are complete souls, even if you have nothing. And I think that's the qualification of a Sun dynasty. This is how we tell the Sun dynasty souls. They're the yogis. Then the division 2, these are souls who will be very powerful, very important in the golden age as well. I think they would be the prime ministers, the ministers. They'll be running things. And they, in the silver age, would become the moon dynasty rulers. So their time for ruling is later, but their importance for enacting is there. And my take on it from the Moralies is, like Baba has been talking to us about passing in all 4 subjects. And the Sun dynasty, they pass in all 4 subjects. But the Moon dynasty, the division 2, it's yoga where things are lacking a bit. So what you find is there are many Brahmins who are brilliant in knowledge and brilliant in service. And you will see that Daddy Janki used to talk about this, but Dada also talks about this. Knowledge and service are connected, and yoga and dharana are connected. Yoga and inculcation are connected. So why the Sun dynasty become the Sun dynasty is because of this volume of yoga and this depth and intensity of yoga, which leads to them becoming full of all divine virtues, because you gain all of the 8 powers through yoga. In Shiv Baba's company, you also absorb all of the virtues. So their dharana becomes very elevated. But then there are many Brahmins who are brilliant in knowledge and in service. And it's something that I've shared with you before as well, that there's a morally where Baba remembers, or a few moralies, where Baba remembers the story of King Janak. And King Janak is the father of Sita in the scriptures. So another name for Sita is Janki. That's the name of Daddy Janki. So that was her Lokik name before Nala. But Baba switched her name. So Baba always called her Janak, not Jank. And so on one side, he's the father of Sita, but the legend is that he was this type of, not fakir, because he was a king, but he was this type of yogi king. And he was a soul who was able to administer everything and live within a kingdom, but he had the secret of bodilessness and of Jivan Mukti, of liberation and life. So in the scriptures, another name for Janak and for Janki, for Sita, is Videhi, the bodiless one. So when gurus speak the scriptures, they will sometimes refer to them by this name, Videhi, the bodiless one. But until Shiv Baba comes and explains these things, none of this makes any sense. We just say these words. And Shiv Baba explains that you have to become soul conscious. This is the key. So what people like Daddy Janki, Brahma Baba, Daddy Prakashwani, and so on, they're really great at is that they were able to have constant yoga. But then you've also got some souls who are great at being trustees, even within their businesses. And there was a brother who was the first very senior business person to become a BK in Hyderabad, in India, the middle, so not Hyderabad in Sindh where the Yagya started, but the famous Hyderabad that people know, but mainly because of like IT, and it's quite a technological city. It's also famous because it's been famous throughout the centuries for its education, really. It's like a famous universities, and many of you might know of the Nobel Prize winner, Rabindranath Tagore. And Tagore spent some years, he moved especially from Calcutta to go and live in Hyderabad. So it's like the seed of learning, the seed of scholarship. And this brother was a famous business person there, and he became a proper BK in maybe 1995, something like that, 1994. And he had thousands of employees, and he made them all do the 7 days course. That was part of their training. And he converted so many things into like a BK, like processes. I can't remember everything he made, but these multiple business people, they have many companies, so they make many different things. And I think some of the things that were maybe related, he even built in like a Sattvic philosophy to that, and had Baba's rooms everywhere, and Baba's sisters going and doing trainings and so on. Then his children as well, he brought them and got them involved. So they were creating their fortune. And you can imagine business people like that are very well connected with politicians. So he opened up doorways into the state ministries there as well. And you might recall that a few weeks ago, we were hearing and watching the Murli when Gyan Sarovar was open. And if those of you that watched that video, you would have seen after the Murli, the Chief Minister of Rajasthan, Mr. Chenna Reddy, he met Bapdada. And he had already, he was originally from Hyderabad. And I think he was a Congress, I think he was part of the Congress party at the time. So what they do is the Prime Minister then decides who are the chief ministers of different states. So he had been offered to go back to Hyderabad, which on one side, for Madhaban, they would have preferred he stayed in Rajasthan because he had helped get all sorts of planning permissions for Gyan Sarovar, it's a very complicated place to build. So they needed that political help. But he was going back to Hyderabad. And if you look now in Hyderabad, it was his successor, the current Chandrababu Naidu. I think he's a BJP chief minister, but he created a culture of cooperation with the BKs in Hyderabad. So the retreat center in Hyderabad is actually on land given by the state. And so all of this started from this business person creating all these connections with Chenna Reddy, who was the governor of Rajasthan, but from Hyderabad, then future. So if you think this one soul, how many thousands? And I can recall him coming to Global Cooperation House, I think in 95, I was young, but he did give an evening talk at Global Cooperation House. And then it was again a big surprise. The following year or so, he left the body. So quite suddenly. And I recall in the Borg message, Baba saying he's gone into the advanced party. And we also had, it came, those of you that watched the video, I think it might have been in the Murli, Sister Shelley of Sheffield, she had also suddenly left the body there in Madhaban. And Baba spoke about her going into the advanced party as well. So I think until then, we were thinking about these senior daddies who became Karmic. They would be the only ones going into the advanced party. But we began to become aware that there's a variety of souls going into the advanced party. And it was again in this conversation that I had with Devi Janki after the Murli, where I've shared with you that I had always thought that the Sun dynasty family would then become part of the moon, I thought the Sun dynasty ended at the end of the Golden Age, and then the Moon dynasty begins. But she was very insistent that the inheritance is for 21 births. So if you're part of the Sun dynasty, you stay part of the Sun dynasty for 21 births. And she said the Sun dynasty family will also be there in the Silver Age. And everyone will still look at them with that same regard, that these are the Sun dynasty family. But it's the Moon dynasty that are actually the ruling family in there. And she began talking about this brother, KVK Raju. She said, because it was this point had come that day in the Morally about King Janak. So she said, well, Janak is shown part of the Moon dynasty, the father of Sita. And she said that, because everyone was surprised that this brother left the body, and then Baba said he's going in the advanced party. And her churning on it was that because he benefited, I think he had been with Baba 5 years, not more than that. And then he's gone straight into the advanced party. So Daddy said that because he benefited so many souls, thousands of souls, Shiv Baba will clear his karmic accounts because of the stock of blessings. And if we can see now with hindsight that service has continued for years afterwards. So that soul is obviously accumulating in his account wherever he is, without even having to do anything more. His son is still cooperative and enabling, so he's created like a legacy. And so Daddy's churning was that you can also have your karmic accounts cleared, but she emphasized to me it would have to be that much service. But we're talking huge amounts of service. Then you can. So that was from that, I came to the conclusion that the Moon dynasty, maybe they don't have that time, as in that brother's case, or the inclination to have that yoga over a long period of time, or maybe there isn't that enthusiasm for yoga or something. But maybe they play such an important role in service that what happens is that Baba clears their accounts for them in that way. So that's my take on it. So there's something like moon means that it's not quite full. It's not like the sun. So the sun is the symbol, like should we call Shiv Baba the sun? So it's the symbol of the degrees not reducing. So these are souls who pass in 4 subjects. They've got that high standard in all 4. And if you pass in yoga, you pass in all 4 really, don't you? Yoga is the main one, really. So, but the Moon dynasty, I think something is missing in the yoga. And this is why the symbolism of Sita Ram is the bow and arrow, whereas Baba says that Krishna is shown with a flute. And so they got this, it's like the flute is very light and they're dancing in happiness, it's super sensory happiness. Baba said to us the other day that your stage at the end will be like the gopis and gopis. You'll be just dancing in super sensory happiness. But you're not there yet. At the moment, you'll just keep crying and going up and down. And he was talking about us crying this morning in the blessing as well. So what you have is, if you don't have that level of yoga, then in the final moments, there can be like a battle. So Baba spoke about this to us last Sunday, that you've got the yogis and you've got the yodhas, the soldiers. So I think the souls who come into Division 2, there's still a battle going on inside. And the yogis they're in the flying stage. They've gone beyond the battle completely over a long period of time. So then there would be no battle in the final moment either. So that's my take on it. And the third division, there are some souls who won't rule at all in the golden and silver age. But they would claim some thrones in the copper age. And like Ambika Ben was saying earlier, there'll be some newer souls coming in the golden and later on in the silver age. There'll be, but there's particular importance that Devi used to give the subjects of the first birth. So she was saying the 900,000, those subjects, even though they're in division 3, but they will have celibacy, sattvic food, daily moral. This is the indication, really, of the souls, because to come in, even to be a subject of that first Lakshmi Narayan, is very, like, to with your own eyes to witness Krishna and Radha, with your own eyes to witness Lakshmi Narayan. Think how few souls have that in the entire cycle. And to have that honor. And we know that all 900,000 are invited to the coronation ceremony of that first Lakshmi and Narayan. Baba tells us, doesn't he, that that's the first day of the first month of the first year. It's the year 111 of the calendar. It's the first Diwali. So all 900,000 attend that first day. So to be honored, to be witnessing that first Lakshmi and Narayan's coronation, you have to have had that purity and study over a period of time. So looking at such Brahmins, we look with such elevated vision, but we can see that some Brahmins, just that depth of effort, it's just a bit beyond them. Like going into depth of knowledge. Like many Brahmins, they like listening to the Murli and they listen every day, but it's like a surface level understanding a lot of the time. And if you challenge them to go deeply, they don't want to go there. They're happy, they're content with what they know. And then yoga, they do have yoga. They can, but really becoming equal to Baba, that's beyond that. They're not even really trying to do that. They're just happy to maintain themselves and just staying with Baba. So they're still elevated souls. And my perception would be that those 900,000, they would become kings and queens in the copper within India more. So they will also claim the throne. And Baba tells us that in some mornings, Baba says that you have 3/4 happiness in the cycle. And that's my interpretation of this, that out of the 900,000 who are there in the first birth, all of us will claim a throne at some point in the first 3 ages of the cycle. Some, if you come in the first division, you will consistently be part of the royal family for all 3 ages. Anyone else want to come in with some thoughts? That's just my overview, bit of detail. One more thing. One thing I've been talking to Baba about is, we had it in the Murli the other day, yesterday, you got to make such efforts that you can claim Mama and Baba's throne. Now, even to come in the 108, I've been saying to Baba, it doesn't mean you actually sit on Lakshmi and Narayan's throne. So, what is the effort of that? And then there are some members of the second division who, like you're saying, Sujata, then they become Sita and Ram, who do sit on that throne. because it's the same throne of Mama and Baba that continues right till the end of the silver. And so, like I just meant, I gave the example of that brother. Maybe he, because like you're saying, Ram is worshipped so much. I mean, you wouldn't say that Ram is worshipped any less to Krishna. And certainly by the end of the Iron Age, Ram is a better example. Like Krishna has been defamed so much that actually the stories around his behavior are not a good example. Whereas Sri Ram is shown as very moral and very decent. So you couldn't say that he's worshipped any less. And which makes me think that the souls who claim that throne have had that level of impact in service as well. That would be my thinking. Whereas the royal family of the Sun dynasty, they've had the yoga, but not necessarily that, like some could be very incognito, couldn't they? They pass with honor because they've had that yoga, but they're incognito. So maybe they've not had that impact in service. And maybe others, they don't have as much yoga, but their impact in service is so great. They've gained so many blessings that the reward of that is they get to rule over the whole world. And it's only a few souls that get that opportunity.
About silver, as Baba says, because their pass mark was 33%. Baba said.
I think that might be just another subject of yoga.
And Baba says, you need equal. We have had Murlis in all 4 subjects, even up to 75%. Some said, Baba, said that's not, you have to have.
Yeah, you have to have like sometimes Baba gives us a 5% margin or something like that. But it's still, we're looking at 95, 99, 100 with that. We are looking at that level in all 4 subjects. But we know from Baba's Murli, don't we, that really it's the yoga.
Yeah, like Baba said, you are yogis, not your Yoda, the
soldiers.
So yeah, fighting. You shouldn't be fighting. You should be having yoga with relationship. And also Ram and Sita, they share the same throne. And there's an importance to that as well.
Yes, I don't know how much to read into that. If what Ranjan Ben's pointing out is if you look at the older pictures of the Kalpa tree, you'll see that in the trunk, Lakshmi and Narayan have separate thrones. They're standing separately. And then Sita and Ram are depicted as sharing the throne, like a combined throne. So that was some of that early thinking.
It's like an attachment and not properly. It is because Mama made her own, and of course Baba made his own, and they had more yoga, like you say, and dharana. And also in the Ramayana, they say at the end, Ram started to win the battle, but it was a bit too late. And so what they say that he couldn't win the Ravan completely, but then Ravan's younger brother, who was worshipped Ram, pointed out that he will never be able to win him over unless, because his navel has that nectar. So I was listening to Rajubhai's class on the, sanskars about it. Baba said 2 weeks ago that you should have such a subtle checking of yourself. Remember that Monday? I think it was on the 31st. Last Sunday was the 18th January. Murli, but before that, Baba said in the 31st, this New Year's, that you should have very thorough checking and change yourself. And so he was saying to change the sanskars, you have to have so much. It's not that, sometimes you skip the Murli, you do some dialysis. That won't help change the sanskars, but thorough checking. And we were so, he explained about this. I always wondered, I watched Ramayana even before knowledge, but I could never understand what he meant. Vibhishan, his name, his Ravan's younger brother was Vibhishan, but he was different natured. He was vegetarian, he was very kind, he worshipped and he helped Ram. And so when he was looking for his Sita, so he pointed out, he said, you'll never win him unless you hit him in his navel and, because he's got that nectar that is protecting. But Raju explained the meaning of that for us, that it's the subtle checking as well. And Baba says, 5 vices you can see, they are very easily, they are gross and we can conquer that. But then the subtle vices, like jealousy, bossiness, Dada Baba said, some say, oh, we don't have anger, but you have to have some anger, bossiness. And Baba said, even that is a sign of anger, and you shouldn't have that, you should be free. Remember the last month, the Mulya free from Parchintan and anger, and then looking at others' defects, and there are 9 points. And so we have to have that much subtle checking. And so this is why Ram would also go to Silver Age. That's what I gathered, that is that, they didn't do the proper checking, and then at the end it was too late to remove the subtle vices. And so this is why our position, multiple status was determined by that, or Sun dynasty or Moon dynasty. I think that's why Ram and Sita, but there's a lot of worship of them.
There's one worldly where Baba says the final Ram, Sita, gets stolen by Ravan.
But
so also that being Ram at the beginning of the Silver Age and being Ram at the end, that final Ram will come into the path of vice and
in Thailand,
losing that kingdom. And if we think about it, just this morning Baba was saying how it's Baba and Mama at that time that begin the worship of Shiva. It's not the final Sita and Ram. So who are the real leaders? Even then. So, it's thinking about that as well. When do we get the kingdom as well?
Even Thailand and Indonesia, if you look at that, it's very interesting. And even this kingdom, there is have this current king, they say 13th, 12th or 13th Ram, So people go to and worship them as well, and they believe in that. In Indonesia, they have a temple to monkey, Sri Lanka, they have Ravans. People go.
Sujata Ben, does that answer your question? Did you want to come back on that?
Thank you so much. Oh my God, this knowledge is so deep and the churning is amazing. Honestly, so beautiful the way both of you explained. And also one point came to my mind is when you said it could be the service the soul of Ram did, he may have gained that throne. Because even in the Bhakti story, Ram went to the forest to serve the rishis and munis and all that. So main focus was in that story. That's the reason he went to the forest for 14 years. So that really makes sense to me. So beautiful. I'm glad I've asked this question. Thank you so much.
Yes, Saloganam Shanti. You have to unmute yourself, sister.
Shanti, my divine family, very happy to be with you. I have one question about changing the sanskara. I think that the whole Raja Yoga process is to change our sanskars. But my question is, are we able to change all the sanskaras, or they will remain those who will remain unchanged? Is it relative or absolute? Can it be absolute, or some sanskara will still remain intact, or you know? And second reflection I was having while you were explaining is that actually Baba with yoga he makes us able to change the sanskaras when we change the feelings. When we have new feelings, our sanskara can change. It's about the feelings that should be once these feelings are modified, the sanskara doesn't have any support to remain. So, but while the process, are we able to finish to change them, or it's impossible mission?
Yeah, it's an interesting question to churn on. My experience is that we have to use knowledge to change our thoughts, and we have to use yoga to change our feelings. So if we don't do both, then nothing changes. Thoughts are always the foundation for everything. So hence, we've got to use these points of the morally, and then just changing our thoughts also, as you're saying, doesn't change our sanskars. We do need to change our feelings. And we had that morally on the present Chit, the satisfied Chit. And the thing about feelings is they're very much driven by the past. And we've been buried in the graveyard of these feelings because 63 births, we don't sort anything out, do we really? You know, like we just carry our burden, we just leave our body and take the burden with us. And what Baba is saying is that you have subconsciously just carried layers and layers and layers of traumas and impurities and hurt and anger and so on. And you are coming to Baba with all of that. Now, some of it you're conscious about because maybe it's of this life, but other things you're unconscious about it. And so Lady Genki used to say the first thing we've got to do is to absorb Shri Baba's love into our Chit and clean that out. And so this is very, very important. She used to say this Chit, this past memory track, it's in between the mind and the heart. And whatever we're thinking in the mind and whatever we're feeling in the heart, it gets filled into the Chit. And then the Chit drives these thoughts and feelings. We go round and round and round. And we're just affirming these old patterns over and over and over again. So most people in the Iron Age, they're not really awake. You know, they are asleep and influenced by this Chit. They're like unconscious. Even physically, they're conscious, but the intellect is partly unconscious because of the influence of the Chit. So people will they'll perceive and react based on the Chit. So but this is what we all do. And it's only as the Chit heals, the heart heals, and the mind begins to develop a new way of thinking, that our sanskars can even begin to change. And sanskars begin to change as we begin to create new patterns, new emphasis. As you're saying, if we support sanskars, they just stay, they don't change at all, they just get reinforced. So every day Baba's teaching us to be different, to create new sanskars. And what Baba says to us is don't associate with the old sanskars. So he says, don't use the word my sanskars. He wants us to even change our language. Because if we use the language, sometimes it reinforces an attitude. So he says, don't even say my sanskars. These sanskars were not with you in the golden age. So if they're really yours, that means you came with them from the soul world and you had them at the beginning. But you didn't have this. You acquired them halfway through the cycle in the copper age and in the iron age. So Baba says, consider them to be Ravan's sanskars, not your sanskar. And so he creates this mentality within us that we disassociate. And we're not thinking anymore about me having to change sanskars, but we're having the thinking that we just got to stop using them. Then as we stop using them, they become less powerful. And then Dedi Janki, and it comes in one or two Murlis as well, she used to explain there's a subtlety around emerging sanskars and merging sanskars. So the more that we focus upon changing our thoughts and making them according to the morally, and then changing our feelings and making them aligned with Baba's values, then it's also emerging sanskars from the golden age that we have within us. But they've been buried, so they're very deeply buried. And what Mama and Baba were very good at is emerging them very quickly. So, like Baba was saying to us last Sunday, that for most of us, it's a battle. We got these original sanskars and we know about them. But we're still influenced heavily by this, what we call the old nature. Actually, it's not that old. It's the nature from the copper and iron age. The really old nature is the pure, original nature of the soul. That's the ancient nature. So if I use that word ancient nature, and we call the Ravan's nature the old nature and sanskars, so Baba notices that there is this battle within us between the ancient nature and the old nature that we have. And as Brahmins, we feel disappointed in ourselves because we know who we really are. We know what Baba wants us to be. And yet we don't have the yoga power to be able to conquer this old nature. So Baba's saying, become yogis. This is your key. And this training he's been giving us this week about stabilizing and intoxication. We're getting an insight. How did Mama and Baba do it? So Daddy Janki and the other daddies used to always say they never saw Mama make any effort. And this is what Baba's meaning, that we battle. Like he looks at us and we look like we're making effort because we're battling. But Mama and Baba, they never noticed that they even had a battle. They just conquered and they emerged. So Shiv Baba tells us that people began to have visions of Sri Krishna because Brahma Baba emerged these sanskars. And the daddies used to say that they really felt that Mama was a goddess. Like when we used to meet Daddy Gulzar, like I always say that Daddy Gulzar reminds me a lot of Mama, like what Mama was like. When you're with Daddy Gulzar, you feel like you're with a goddess. Like even from that, she never felt like she was really part of the human world. She really felt like she was this goddess has come from the subtle region to be with us. So the daddies say Mama was like this as well. Like you felt they've just emerged their original nature. You don't feel they're ever battling with old sanskars and old nature. And the key is their yoga power. So what Shiv Baba's company does in yoga is it emerges because his sanskars match our ancient sanskars. So in his company, we learn to emerge these old sanskars. And all of us have this experience. Why does Baba like us going on retreats? Why does Baba like us going to Madhuban? Because for the time we're in the retreat, for a weekend, for 7 days, or Madhuban for 2 weeks or 1 month, we begin to feel those ancient sanskars. And then we go home and the old nature comes back again. But the way Baba sees it is, at least we had an experience of what we can be. While we were in Madhuban, we didn't realize we could be so loving, so spiritual. Our yoga could be so good. So Daddy Janki used to say that when people say to her that, oh, my yoga is not as good as it used to be, my experience, my happiness, my intoxication. So she used to say, but you did have it one time. And this is the indication that that's possible, right? So this is the emerging. What those atmospheres of Madhuban give us is the vibration of Bapdada's yoga and vibration, the daddy's yoga, mama's yoga. What it does is they stabilized in those ancient sanskars. So they've left a vibration in the land. And we enter that land and it emerges for us. And this is what's called Mansa Seva. So this is, it ultimately, I just think it all comes down to yoga. Really. And would anyone else like to share any thoughts on that?
Oh, Shanti, my thoughts has always been that now we clean up as much as we can, if not fully. And for those of us who may not have been able to clean up the sanskars, these acquired sanskars, is that on our way back through Dharamraj, we clean our karmas, what we didn't finish here, to become karmatit. But the sanskars that I didn't clean, I'm not sure that that is clean. I see that somehow still latent within the soul. And that when I come into body consciousness, those sanskars that I have not transformed and emerged all my original sanskars, emerges again quicker than some others. I think I would have shared my belief in that before, is that if I leave with the sanskars of a trace of anger, something will trigger me in the copper age going forward, later into the copper age, quicker than someone else who did not have that sanskars at the end of confluence. So, because yoga, yes, will clean. Knowledge and yoga in particular will clean those old sanskars. And so I see those being latent because for me, that's how I can explain why someone will be strong in a vice going forward as opposed to another vice going forward. So I don't know if your thoughts would have any changes in that.
It's you mentioning this before. I think my perception of an old sanskar is different to yours. I think that's where we are. We have a different perspective. So like you gave the example of anger. But for me, anger is the expression of love through body consciousness. Right? So if we think about why do we get angry, it might be because, you had so much love for someone, they let you down, you have love for truth, someone is lying, You have love for perfection. Someone is not doing things properly. So if you look at what those triggers are, and then what is the core motive behind the anger, I always feel that the soul is expressing virtue. But in the copper and iron age, that virtue gets twisted up. And through body consciousness, it gets expressed as vice. Like, what is lust? Its base is in love, isn't it? Anger's base is in love and power. Greed as well. There's a love base of greed as well, isn't there? Ego as well, you could say, couldn't it? It's love and power there. And then attachment, again, the core is love. So I just feel the core of the soul is always love, power, and truth. I think these are the three core values of every soul. And we are all different in the way we express that. And in body consciousness, we all know, all of us are very experienced how that sometimes we don't even mean to get angry, and yet we got angry. And because actually our heart is in the right place. But somewhere our way of expressing that love has gone wrong. So we've developed a sanskar, or like Baba mentioned today about bossiness, that some people will say that, I'm not angry, but I'm just a bit bossy. So again, I would see that as the quality of power inside of the soul being expressed. And then we can look at very gross sins as well, like very obvious sins like violence and corruption and things like that. Again, it comes back to power, doesn't it? So like I could run through the whole of human history and look at all the different examples, and I think you come back to love, power, and truth being expressed through body consciousness. So because of that, I disagree with you in that I don't believe we take the old sanskar to the golden and silver age, because there we are not distorted. Like, there's no fear, there's no circumstance which would cause a distortion. But as we reach the end of the silver age, Baba tells us, doesn't he, we lose our power to have children through yoga, through the power of thought. And that, like, I don't know for sure, but if I'm envisaging it, we come into our first crisis where no one's having children like that. Now, that then becomes, it's like an external driver. We've lost a power of some sort. There's an external driver, which then drives us to come onto the path of lust. And then I presume we become more tribal as well, don't we? We become, so that tribalism, that difference, that all then causes us to have power games. So I still think it comes to love and power. And then once you begin bhakti, then it's about truth, isn't it? Truth and power. And we know all religion is really politics, really. I mean, religion is political. So you look at the narratives of bhakti and the narratives of Ravan, and it's about love, power, and truth being distorted by external structures, external bureaucracies. Why I believe the soul is always expressing love, power, and truth. But in the copper and iron age, those three qualities become vices. And now Baba is teaching us once again how not to turn them into vices and to express them in a pure way. Do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, as you're speaking, brother, I am also thinking that the soul in the soul's world, Baba has said, will be completely pure and pristine. So really the possibility of anything being latent within the soul will not exist. So that when we go into the golden age, it couldn't possibly be there. No old sanskars. So I think I've had a bit of realization where that is concerned. So
I think you're right. What you said at the beginning about Dharma is also part of that. You know, but why are we passing through? So I think what you said, that's correct, that where a soul has not finished all of their accounts through yoga, and we won't go into it now, we can repeat it another time, but those of you who want to go back through the YouTube videos, we covered it a couple of times, the 10th of December 1984, morally, which is the morally after the chemical explosion in Bhopal, with the Union Carbide factory. And Baba explains in that there are some karmic accounts that we just got to clear down here. Karmic accounts through the body, karmic accounts with relations, and karmic accounts with natural, like with nature. So those three categories, they have to be finished down here. But then there are more subtle, like internal karmic accounts, like you're saying, with sanskars, nature, thoughts, feelings. Those karmic accounts would be cleared in the land of Dharmaraj if they haven't been cleared down here. And Lady Janki used to say she thought that Dharmaraj is really for the Brahmins. She think her perception was that distraction is where all the souls of the world clear their accounts. And then Baba doesn't punish them again, like unless they were like the actual people who dropped bombs or like they were terrorizing others. So maybe then he punishes those. But she thought for the general people, they've already been through so much. Their final memory will be of Baba just hugging them and embracing them and taking them up with love. But she thought it would be for us Brahmins to face Baba. That how much did you study? And Baba's told us, he'll show us which moralite, he'll show us even the date of the moralite.
That is in the
tribunal. So, and Brother Jim of the London Centre used to always say to Lady Janki that he doesn't want her sitting on the tribunal because she knows us all so well. So she'll tell Dharmaraj about all of our mistakes. So she used to chuckle a lot about that. It used to make her laugh. And she said that when he said that to her, it made her even more determined to become part of the eight and sit on the tribunal. And Daddy Gulzar used to say that she asked Dada when she went into trance a few times to show her who will be sitting on the eight, and she saw herself sitting there. She said to Daddy Janki as well, she saw Daddy Janki on the tribunal. And so there are those 8 jewels who have completely cleared. They will not. They're the only, my understanding is they're the only Brahmins who don't have something to clear. That even the first division have something left. We don't become 100% like the 8. So that. Would anyone else like to come in? I'll just check the chat. I think someone's writing something. Yes, sure. Yeah, on pure desires and things. These are very interesting topics you're all bringing up. Yeah, I think those are nice points all of you are putting in the chat. I think I can see those points about, do we change or are we emerging? And like you're saying in the chat, as we lack true spiritual power, we lack true spiritual love, we lack peace. As we fill these things from Baba, it's this interesting dynamic, isn't it? Partly we're filling, partly we're emptying, and partly we're emerging, isn't it? It's all three. And there are also some Murlis where Baba talks about burning old sanskars as well. And there's even one or two Murlis where he says that even after you burnt the sanskars, make sure that the ashes are thrown in the river. It shouldn't be that you kept the ashes and the ghost of your old sanskars came alive again. So I think there's a lot of subtlety in sanskars as well, where we think we conquered something. But I think that's my point about external circumstances can distort us. So until we're tested, like testing is a good thing. We should never see testing as a negative thing, because it's only when we're tested that we realize how much has actually changed or not, and how deep is our change. And actually, maybe it was just a surface layer of change, and we didn't really change that deep. And it's only these circumstances that show us that they can still distort us and drive us. You didn't say something?
Well, Baba said in the Murli of last, this 18th, that why do you use Ravan sanskars? You don't know how Baba gives you so much, and you need to use those sanskars so that, past sanskars don't overpower you. And Adi Gulzar often said that even time has wisdom. Time keeps moving, doesn't stop and think about the past. And whereas we children get stuck in the past and then forget. And so, that also doesn't help in changing and checking and everything. So, and then Baba says, like when we go to Madhuban is like a Shish Mahal, a palace of mirrors, where you can see everything. Wherever you go, there's mirror. Like Baba said, you make Maya look as if she is very brave, but she comes to help you, to teach you a lesson. Recently, Baba said that. And so learn and move forward, and don't invite Maya to sit or give her tea and sit, and it means you keep on thinking and going back to past, and that won't help you. But if you just use what Baba said, speak Baba, and because even to think of past, and that's impurity, that's not total purity. And all that doesn't help us to change. So it's the attention and deep checking, subtle checking.
I think that's a good place to stop for today. So shall we finish with some meditation? I'll speak a commentary. And then we've got so much to digest. You've all brought out so many deep things. Lady Jenki used to love question and answer sessions because it made her churn even more and go into the depths. So you can see why. So let's all relax and bring Baba in front of us. And today Baba gave us a very powerful yoga practice. He said to us, turn your eyes into colored glass windows. In your right eye, have the land of nirvana. So begin to visualize that unlimited universe of nirvana. It's a separate element to the elements of this world. In nirvana, silence is a substance. It's an element. Purity is a substance. It's an element. And so take your mind into that original space, your natural space, your home, where you are surrounded by these elements of silence and purity. In this universe, we are dominated by the gravity of the sun, the gravity of other suns, the gravity of planets. But in the soul world, we are all tied in the gravity of the sun of knowledge, Baba. And there's this invisible link between us as stars and the great star, Baba. And it's a flexible link because we can go and explore this unlimited universe. Here, we can't really go very far because our bodies are very limited to the atmosphere of this world. But in the soul world, you as a soul are a rocket. So you can explore the soul world universe. It's unending, unlimited. There's so much to feel and see. Even within the silence and the purity and the light, there are variations. Feel the silence. Feel the stillness of a universe, an unending universe of silence and warmth and purity. In this world, love echoes through the universe. The love of the center of this universe, of the ocean of love. It pulsates, it vibrates through this universe. That world in your right eye. And then in your left arm, take your mind to that time of the first birth, the first kingdom. You have an invite to that very first kingdom. You yourself gave yourself the invite by studying the morally, by observing purity. You got admission. Do you realize how happy you're going to be? And you can see children playing. In that world, every boy is Krishna. Every girl is Radha. Even in the Iron Age, children are so beautiful and happy. Think what children at the beginning, when it's 16 celestial degrees, would be like. Think what parents are like. We can have very good parents in the Iron Age. Think what parents are like in the Golden Age. Baba was saying to us a few weeks ago that in his lifetime of 100 years, the world changed so much through science. There was electricity and cars and airplanes and trains and all sorts going on. People even got to the moon. It can be achieved in 100 years of the Golden Age, when we have unlimited resource, no untimely death, no accidents. Think what the laboratories, the factories, the mines, think about what civilization. We've had great civilizations in the Copper and Iron Ages. Some of them we know about, some of them we don't know about. The Roman civilization, the Egyptian civilization, the Persian civilization, the Aztec civilization, and so on and so forth. We know about some of them, and they were very sophisticated even 2,000 years ago, 1,000 years ago. So think about the first advanced civilization that you are going to be part of. In this world, we're always limited by resources, aren't we? There you're not. What can you not achieve? And Baba tells us in some Maulis that in the Golden Age, every child is an artist. So art, music, culture, drama, these are eternal. Here, some of us can sing, some of us can't sing, some of us can dance, some of us can't. But there, we're complete with all virtues. So you're not even limited by that. You want to sing, you can sing. You want to play an instrument, you can play an instrument. You can do anything. You're not limited by your body, by culture, by society, by resources. And here we have so many poor governments, don't we? So much poor public administration, so much corruption. There we don't. We've got great governance. It's a governance that enables everyone to achieve, doesn't stop people from achieving. That's what it means to rule in the Golden Age. The kings and the queens of the Golden Age are the souls that are best at enabling others to flourish. That's why Baba puts them there. Keep that world in your left eye. And today, be the lighthouse. One eye, nirvana. The other eye, the Golden Age kingdom. Om Shanti. Thank you, everyone. Thanks to those of you who were able to join live and created such a rich discussion. And also warm regards to those of you joining in later on through YouTube. And we look forward to seeing you all again soon. Om Shanti, everyone.
Shanti.
Shanti, thank you so much. Have a beautiful week.
You too. Om Shanti.